My name is Michael Miller, and this is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or a student. 5 things. Too much text. I don't even know if that much text will fly when I try to do a live broadcast, because I think sometimes what gets in the way of doing a live broadcast is having too much text to pump out along with it for you to know when you do your broadcasting. 5 things. So the number one thing, of all the notes and trying to prioritize, it became obvious to me that the one thing I wanted you to take away from my attitude toward MMP is that it levels the playing field. So that's the title. MMP levels the playing field. Well, the playing field, of course, is the Pilates culture and all the playing that's going on. The way it levels it is by revealing the foundation to the folklore. In identifying the foundation to the folklore, or at least from this point of view, that's the way it goes. In MMP, Pilates has an essence of its own. This point of view is determined by a theory. A theory is an attempt to explain something. And MMP is an attempt to explain Pilates. To the point where the definition of MMP Pilates is uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement. Okay. So when it comes to what is Pilates, there's whatever your definition is, and I would contribute that as my definition. Number 2 is, you can race cars, you can design them, or do both. There's a different skill set, perhaps. Well, in between the driving and the designing, there's something other than driving involved, or vice versa. The thing about designing cars, or boats, or bodies, is to understand the theory that it takes, or that's involved in designing. But when it comes to designing, you have to understand more. You have to have more knowledge. Part of that knowledge is understanding the theories that designs are based upon. Okay? Number 3, I was nervous about even juxtapositioning the words lawyers and Pilates instructors, but I only want to point to that both of these types of people practice. A lawyer practices law, and from my point of view, a Pilates instructor practices Pilates. Now, the similarities and the discrepancies between those groups create a real checkerboard. But the point I'd further make is that it's up to you at what level you practice. That's, I think, what I wanted to say about that. I'm used to construction noise, but the incessant blower of leaves, oh, and there's so many leaves outside. And the reason they're blowing them off is the same reason that lazy me actually swept up and tossed all the carpet of dry leaves off the balcony, because a cloud came out of the cold by night and chilling and killing. There's rain on the way, and a reference to Edgar Allan Poe. So that's why all the noise. All right, so let me go through this. And they practice at the level at which they understand it. There you go. Right? And so where do you go to learn any subject? You go to school. And it's up to you to determine what degree of word of mouth you're absorbing versus what degree of explanation. Because to me, there's beyond word of mouth, there's understanding it, there's explaining it. And in terms of, you can race cars, and that's pretty immediate and direct, and perhaps uniquely you are skillfully able to do. But when it comes to designing race cars, it requires more knowledge. Right? And whether it's race cars or boats or bodies, understanding the theory that's involved can not only get you a long way in designing yours or others' bodies and the way you train them, but also in, what was I going to say, how you train others to do the same thing. Number 4. When Bilbo climbed the tree, and he's part of a band of dwarves, and perhaps as the hobbit and the thief gets designated to climb up a tree to try to see where the heck they are, because they've been on this path forever, and it's hot, and it's uncomfortable, and it's threatening, and so reluctantly Bilbo goes up the tree and ends up escaping the sunless forest floor and breaking the canopy of leaves and being among the birds and the insects and the heat of the canopy and be able to see out. So in the story, the height revealed that they were at the bottom of a bowl of a valley. And it's one of the reasons why it seemed that there was no end in sight for where they were. Why am I telling you this? Because when Bilbo climbs the tree, I'm making a metaphor about Pilates and surviving, and as part of that surviving, understanding some theory to go along with whatever you know and are part of in the folklore. And the theory comes from me, and is broadcast to you under the brand of Michael Miller Pilates. Pillow in the tree. We're back to 1 scoop of folklore, or 2 scoops of folklore, or 1 scoop of folklore and 1 scoop of theory. See, I'm trying to make in your mind the distinction between what is folklore, which is word of mouth, which is almost the total culture of Pilates, versus theory, which came out in the year 2000. Insofar as me writing a book that tries to explain Pilates based on 3 things out of Joe's book. So 1945, the year 2000, 55 years later. And the invitation, or the suggestion I'm making is that it's because you want to escape the situation you're in, and to me the situation of turmoil for someone interested in Pilates, especially the instructor, trying to continue seeing what makes what they do special, and being able to distinguish that in order to have the offers that you make for what you're willing to teach for. You can offer not only a presentation, you can offer to be an instructor, or you can offer to be a teacher. Paid in advance is always a good thing. But it doesn't have to be that way, except for being a presenter. Because of survival and surviving and wanting to know more, wanting more knowledge, because of the situation you're in. If you're in the Pilates tsunami and there's pressure to survive or to make money or even to understand what you're trying to do as a student, being willing to look through this ideal point of view gives you a point of reference or a point of view that can help you more clearly determine your own. I think better when it's not weaves clearing. Number 5. Just in observing culture rolling by looking at TV and social media, right? Interacting with you. It's just human nature, it seems, to identify with a group, probably because it's easier to survive by identifying or being part of a group than it is be alone. Right? But in so much of this identifying with a group, don't let being a whatever definition you want to make of whatever group you belong to, be it gender or ethnicity, don't let that identifier distance you from being human. Distance was the word I wanted to say. Realize, as a Pilates instructor, human beings are what I care about, even though across the spectrum, Pilates is applied in ways I'm not even aware of. MMP works with biology and physics and human beings. That's the scope of its interest. I think that Bobby made a good point a couple of recordings ago on Facebook about if you can feel it or not. You know, can you feel it in your body? Can you feel your body changing? And whatever the adjectives are or the extension of the question is, it's about sensation, right? And in the two identifications, I encourage you to offer to explain to someone for how much time and how much money up front. So just get paid in advance for for the time you're willing to take to explain what you know about CT and MMP. If it's going to be a big jump or altogether different, I think you help your viewer or your student by honestly stating that this goes from what's common knowledge to someplace else, or assumes a different point of view. And to the extent that you try to survive in the tsunami of Pilates passion and the cross currents of monetary exchange, it would be easy to drown if you weren't standing on the foundation of having an explanation that you can feel. Not immediately and maybe not on demand, but this effort of doing Pilates is a pursuit of complete coordination of your being, thinking, and observing. This is Michael Miller Pilates point of view. Take your sense of self. All right. So in terms of in English, having a phrase that's called a sense of self, a sense of self, a sense of who you are. And the presumption might be that sense of self exists only within the thinking portion of who you are, of what you are, and that a sense of self doesn't more literally mean a sensation of one's self. Okay? And so when you do Pilates, you pursue the ideal progressive pattern of the mat in acknowledgement of and respect for the reality you find yourself in that you hope to survive in. So my statement, my ending statement is to take your sense of self directly from your senses. Not just whimsically. When you do Pilates, it's an expression of will in a Western mind, Western-rooted philosophical point of view. It's something you willfully do. And what it is preparation. It's preparation for what? For knowing, for whatever comes up, because you don't know what comes up, and what's the target? To survive. Surviving. You want to be ready, because if you're not ready, you don't survive. And then my last abstract comment is focus on human, because there is no resolution at the distinction level. And the great thing about teaching Pilates is that exactly is what it's about. is helping a human being coordinate their capacities in being, thinking, and observing. And nothing's more important than that when it comes right down to surviving. And the strike of the tuning fork when your person comes in for their private session, lingers. The strike of the bowl, the vibration, the resonance. You call that attenuates? I don't know. But it diminishes over time. And it's time to go back and strike the to attain the resonance again. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, add two and two, direct your thinking. Geist.